นะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะพุทธังธัมมังสังฆังนะมัสสามิ So today is this is the 24th year of these reflections on gratitude to parents, and this word gratitude is has incredible kind of depth in the Buddhist world, because it's our ability, this human ability, one of our virtuous, beautiful qualities is gratitude. It makes our life, if we feel grateful, we have that sense of gratitude for the goodness that, say, of our parents, of our teachers, of people in general, then this generally increases the joy of our existence. And so William Blake says gratitude is heaven itself. So I've always contemplated that. I'm a great fan of William Blake, the poet, who found this as I think he was probably a Buddhist in his heart. I probably didn't know anything about Buddhism. But it is, the Buddha's teaching, it's about the way things are, so it's not like a kind of individual discovery. It's not a personal teaching. It's the kind of result of observing, of witnessing, observing how nature really works, the laws of nature, and how happiness arises and ceases, and then the nature of this realm, human realm, planetary life. It's a solar system. We're all connected in this mystery of the solar system, the sun and moon, the stars, the galaxies, and then planet Earth itself, and then the movements and changes of seasons, and the earth, fire, water, and elements. The whole lot is a kind of mystery or a miracle. And being human then is our ability. We have this rare kind of birth as a human individual on this planet. And of course you hear about modern scientists and they're trying to find out, is there life on other planets in outer space? In the terms of what we conceive of, and such as our human existence, the planet that we live on. Could we go and live on Mars or Jupiter or some other galaxy? But what we know is that this is the place that we're at. We're here and now, and we're feeling this intense experience of having a human form in a mysterious universe that is continuously changing. It's the experience of impermanence and change. So we have a lot of fear about this realm that we live in. We don't understand it, don't understand ourselves very well, and we don't know what's beyond just the limitation, say, of our own experience. Not to mention what's going on Mars or Venus or other planets. We can imagine, we can create, fantasies about it. We can just deny any possibility. But the reality is we don't really know. And that's a kind of knowing, a powerful sense of knowing, not knowing, rather than not knowing in a kind of just personal, ignorant way we think of not knowing. And this is the humbling result of contemplating our existence as a human individual, because we can create ourselves, we have this kind of tendency, conceit sometimes, arrogance, to think we are the ultimate creation, or, even, the megalomania of thinking I'm God, or I'm the supreme creator. I mean, various madnesses tend to create this illusion of being all-powerful. But when we really get right down to it, we don't. We're not very powerful at all. At increasing age, it's harder to get up on this high seat. And just to leap up with alacrity. I used to advise meditation retreats, encourage the meditators to, when the alarm rang in the morning, leap up with alacrity. I can't do that. So the age also is humbling, because it does, it takes that conceit. You have to eat your words so many times in this life, the kind of confidence and arrogant statements that I used to make. As I get older, I realize that, how much I've learned as a Buddhist monk. Well, this is the 44th Vasa. But the real insight is not knowing. Knowing, not knowing. But knowing in a way that isn't put in personal terms, but recognizing the limitation that I have in this form, as this human body. Its limitations and its tendencies, and also the personal, inheritance, my ancestral inheritance, genes, DNA, whatever, plus the tendencies I have on the individual level, my emotional habits and virtues and vices. But on a day of gratitude, where you think of, I think of my own mother and father. Now, they passed away over 20 years ago, so thinking of them with intense gratitude and love, because it was through them that I could manifest as a human individual, and then I had this opportunity to meet the Buddha, or the teachings of the Buddha, chance to live the holy life, and it was, and this has been a very good life. When I look back on my life, I feel gratitude for all the wonderful opportunities I've received from being born to the parents that I had, to the present moment, the monastic training, the Luang Por Chah in Thailand, and then for the past 34 years living in England. So when I think of England, I think I have this feeling of gratitude arising, because my life here has been a very good one. And also it's a country that I feel, has given, has allowed me to live in this traditional style as a Buddhist monk in a European country that isn't Buddhist country, but yet has this tolerance and this respect for other religions, to where living as a Buddhist monk has never been any real problem or difficulty living here in this country. So these are ways of reflecting to develop and cultivate this sense of gratitude. Now, the cultural background isn't one of gratitude. It's about the American conditioning of my generation was not being grateful, but complaining and criticizing. So that my generation, remember starting university in 1951, and then we were all quite clever, youthful types that studied psychology, read Freud and Jung, and developed, these attitudes, psychological attitudes about how the problems that one has in life is due to the lack of wisdom, or problems that one receives, mixed messages or dysfunctional attitudes of the family or the society. Or I was brought up as a Christian, but there was also very fashionable to be an atheist, to deny the validity of any religion. It was all, like for the archaeological museum. Might be interesting to study as if, like some ancient culture. But we actually in the 1950s thought that religion was passé, on the way out. And that the great achievement of mankind, of humankind, was modern science. So that's the ultimate attainment of the human race. So not to dismiss that, there's the ability that goes into that kind of intelligent manipulation of conditioned phenomena. But when you really have the opportunity to practice meditation in this Buddhist way, when you begin to look at yourself and the world around you in a different way than through the cultural fashions, biases of the time, because it's a very ancient teaching. It's not modern, New Age, clever kind of thinking or intellectuality, but it is a real sense of investigating in a way that is not part of the cultural expectation. So like modern science call it empirical science. We tend to look at things outwardly and observe and investigate objects of our senses, what we see or hear, smell, taste, touch. We develop the thinking skills to reason and analyze. But in the Buddhist practice, it's getting to the real source. So the science really is starting from pure awareness, ground zero, in other words, rather than coming from some theory or idea. No matter how logical, reasonable, or scientific it might be, the Buddha takes this science, because Buddhism is really a science in the true sense of knowledge, of profound knowledge. It isn't like empirical. You're not observing from a position starting from me as some scientist with a rational mind trying to prove a theory. But mindfulness is actually getting to the very source, to the empty, pure state of awareness. And this is, of course, is very clearly spelled out in the Buddhist teaching. It's a very clear and exact teaching, getting to the source of where everything begins. So this past week, the monastic community here has been devoting themselves to this practice as a community, because the whole monastic community's aim is to recognize that pure source of consciousness, awareness, that is beyond cultural biases, even religious perceptions or anything else, but it's certainly recognizable through paying attention, through listening, observing. So it's not a kind of fantasy or a proposition we're trying to prove, but the reality that we may have never really understood, recognized, even though it's with us all the time. So this human birth is a very fortunate one. This opportunity that we have allows us to do this. The human creature, this species, human beings, we have this reflective mind. We might call it a Buddha mind. Or, we're not just conscious forms with karmic conditions motivating us. We are that also, but the gift of our humanity is we can reflect on ourselves, we can observe. We're not just mammals operating from, just the habit of conditioning, because the conditioning we do have, we can observe it, reflect on it, see it, know it, and through mindfulness recognize pure consciousness, that isn't about an individual person or even about a species. Contemplate consciousness is we share this with everything. That there's one consciousness and many conditions that manifest. So when we contemplate it in this way, we feel this sense of connection to the whole universe that we can't possibly feel in any realistic way or know through the identity we have with our separateness. And I just think of myself only on a personal level as this creature sitting here as opposed to you, then there's always this sense of separation. This is the reality of a personality. I'm this person, you're somebody else. What have we in common? We might, we have an interest in Buddhism. We like football. Or we may even argue about that. Maybe you like the team that I despise. So then we can get into quarreling and war. But on the conscious level, isn't it? It's one. And then mindfulness is the gate to this totality within the restrictions and limitations that we all have as human individuals. I just think how that is like magic or miraculous, because in the limitation of human thought, we conceive ourselves in such limited ways and bind ourselves to all kinds of fears, anxieties, worries, problems, difficulties, and our whole experience of life can be just going from one condition, one problem to the next, without learning, without awakening, without recognizing the gift of our humanity. So then with gratitude to parents, I reflect on my own parents who gave me birth. I was very fortunate in having good, kind parents. So, I didn't have a lot of to complain about. I did manage during my Freudian period and Jungian period to, begin to criticize my mother and father just like everyone else, because that was the fashionable thing to be doing. And then you wondered, if my parents had, never made a mistake, then I thought, then I wouldn't suffer so much. It's because they gave me mixed messages. They didn't always, we're not always the kind of parents that one would fantasize about having, perfectly mature, well-developed, understanding, and completely devoted to my happiness. Because when you're a child, you think you're the center of the world. Then in this life also, the being born in the United States, it was a country where you were given a lot of freedom to do what you wanted. You didn't have a lot of restrictions, boundaries or demands. It was a time of individual expression, of the ego being the kind of ultimate thing to develop, to self-assertion, self-improvement, making things better, being progressive. We were idealistic. The United States is it's a country that was created out of ideals. So we're brought up to think in terms of how things should be, of ideal situations. And so we didn't have restrictions on, we weren't bound into very limited relationships. We were free to explore the world, travel, get education, sense of my human rights, individual rights, to live my life in the way I wanted to. My parents had certainly a sense of moral propriety, so they provided a very secure, emotionally secure home life for my sister and myself. They were trustworthy, and they were honest people. So I had a good kind of social background that, in spite of all that, I still managed to suffer. And then of course, is it my parents' fault, or is it just the nature of this realm? And then going and living in Thailand, training in a Thai forest monastery with Ajahn Chah, there's a very different cultural attitude than the American one. So you're going from this society from the West Coast, it's very liberal. Washington State, where I was born and grew up, is one of the more liberal states, politically and socially, in the United States. Went to university in California, very, where the avant-garde, where things begin, trends, fads, fashions, revolutions, protests and all the rest. You're free to, the University of California in Berkeley, you could join Trotskyist groups and anything, any kind of, rare, strange political attitude or peculiar interest. You could find your métier, your friends within that university in Berkeley. So the freedom to explore, investigate, do what you want. But in spite of all that, there's still this suffering. By the time I was 30 years old, I'd had occasions, opportunities, had, managed to get things and be successful enough to realize that no matter what, I was basically not happy. I was disappointed. When I was 20, I had great expectations for success in the world. By the time I was 30, I was terribly disappointed, mainly with myself. So that disappointment wasn't due, I couldn't blame that on my parents. So it also went inward, blaming it on, myself, seeing myself in negative terms, be feeling a failure or being disappointed or not living up to the ideas that I had when I was 10 years younger. So then the monastic life became an option for me in Thailand. So from there on, my life began to move in the right direction. So that was like 45 years ago, 1966. So that's most of my life has been, this has been devoted to this investigation of the Buddhist teaching, and not just to to be a scholar of Buddhism and a critic, but to actually put it into practice, make it work, develop it, reflect from it. And of course, this is the gratitude that one experiences for this opportunity to live this life as a human being, and to have such an occasion as to develop wisdom, to awaken to Dhamma, to reality itself. In monastic life, say the samana, what they call a samana. This word samana is a Pali word, Sanskrit word from India, But it means one who, the samana tradition in Asia is one of, it's like a yogi or a human individual that investigates the laws of nature. So Buddhism itself, the Buddhist teaching is not it's not a metaphysical tradition or a theological one. You don't have a hierarchy of deities or coming from conceptualizing heavenly states or supreme creators. It starts from the very basic, the very essential teaching is the truth of the suffering, dukkha, which isn't metaphysical or anything rare or difficult. We can all relate to that. And no matter how fortunate or unfortunate your life has been. And then the Buddha was looking at himself, not at suffering in terms of some generalized idea of how miserable life is, but really taking this dukkha, this suffering, and investigating it, rather than just trying to get rid of it or blame it on other causes. So Buddhism has this unique kind of position in the realm of what we call religions, because rather than addressing spiritual life from the top, it's always from the most ordinary, common experience, the most banal experience that we share as human individuals is the experience of suffering. And from there on, through that investigation, you begin to have insight into the causes and how suffering arises and ceases, how to let go of it, how to recognize non-suffering within these human forms. So like old age. Now, being old man, to say, old people, we suffer from the limitation of our aging bodies, the stiffness, the growing stiffness, the problems that arise due to age could be, have I escaped that? Being a Buddhist monk, have I escaped physical pain and disease and old age? No, you see, those of you who've known me for the past 30 years can see I've certainly gotten older. and my ability to leap up with alacrity has passed. Now I kind of crawl up on the bench. I can't climb mountains like I used to. But is this suffering? And in the Buddhist terms, no. This is just natural, the way conditions change. Human bodies, or any bodies, have a beginning and an ending, whether it's human or animal, insect. It's the autumn season now, isn't it? You see the changing from the seasons, from summer to autumn, and then to winter. So this way of change is not about the suffering of the First Noble Truth. It's just the nature of conditioned phenomena that we're experiencing through our bodies, through our senses, through the mind. And then the non-suffering is understanding this, not putting it into a context of wanting it to be different, but recognizing that in terms of consciousness here and now, that which we're experiencing is change. Through seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, thinking, feeling, this incessant, relentless changingness of conditioned phenomena. So in the samana life, we contemplate this change, and as we do, then we reflect. We begin to develop a wisdom level of discernment, using pure conscious awareness to observe change. Is what we call mindfulness. Sati panya, sati sampajanya. ability to be aware of change. And that awareness then is not something personal, or it's not a condition in itself. It's our ability to observe. So it's what we can consider pure consciousness that we're experiencing, but don't notice because we're always blindly operating through the momentum of change, through the conditioning of the mind, through the self-views, through feelings of love and hate, like and dislike. And getting back to William Blake's gratitude is heaven itself, when I contemplate like this, I'm not trying to kind of just think positively and try to make myself into a grateful person. It's some ideal. I'd like to be grateful, or I should be grateful. And then if I'm not, personally grateful enough, I can feel guilty. Or somebody tells me, you should be grateful. And then I feel, and if I'm not feeling grateful, then I feel angry, upset, somebody telling me I should feel something. So the personal level is, don't tell me what to do. And the reaction, I should be grateful to my parents. But I only feel anger when I think of them. That's one reaction. But this gatanyu, in Pali, gatanyu gataveti, isn't about just trying to, isn't holding to the ideal of gratitude, but it's a real, intense level of gratitude that comes through reflection. It's not coming from personal preferences or from holding on to ideas of what things should be or how anyone should feel. It's coming through the power of observing and witnessing, mindfulness, wisdom, and reflecting on towards the Buddha himself. After all these years as a Buddhist monk, the sense of gatanyu gataveti toward the Lord Buddha himself. Long ago I never met the guy. 2,553 years ago. And yet, I've been able to, because of his wisdom and foresight and vision and compassion, then I benefit now from what he set up on a conventional level through this tradition that he established in India 2,553 years ago. We're all benefiting from this. And when we think of that and we recognize, we put it into practice, it's not just a superficial sense of thanks, but it's a real respect and gratitude for the compassion that the Buddha must have operated from in establishing a teaching that could last for so long a period of time and still be appropriate and useful in a country like this, so far removed from any kind of influence from the original society that the Buddha lived in. Then one's own practice of it and the results of that practice means that you know that this you have these insights, profound understanding of the validity of this teaching, the practical use of it, the skillfulness of it, because it's not just aligning yourself with a Theravadan Buddhist party card, but it's through your own understanding, not just aligning yourself with some religious sect. Because what if the results of the life, or the results of my life as a human individual, as a Buddhist monk, it's very good. The result is a good result. I'm not disappointed. I'm not fed up or disillusioned with the Buddha's teaching. In fact, when I first started, I wasn't quite sure whether it worked or not. Was it another interesting Asian philosophy, but it didn't, no practical use, just interesting intellectually, or did it actually, can one do it at this time? Would it work? How do you practice it? What do you do with this teaching? And then, of course, the opportunities I had in Thailand, and with a teacher like Ajahn Chah, who had that kind of insight, understanding, himself. He actually practiced and realized the validity of this teaching through his own use of it. So that is, this is how it's handed down from one generation to another. It's a teaching that's passed on, and the teaching itself has never been corrupted. When maybe Buddhist monks, individuals can be corrupted, things like this, but the teaching has never been corrupted. It's just the pure teaching that no doubt the Buddha gave is called his first sermon after enlightenment. So then when I contemplate this, then this Gatanyu, Gataveti manifests. I think, oh, wonderful. The Buddha, really. and then of course going to Thailand and meeting a teacher like Ajahn Chah. I didn't know what I was going. I was just going to Thailand, couldn't speak the language. Thailand's never been a colony of a European power, so in those days, back in 1966, it had very little contact. It didn't have the influence, say, of British or French that say other Asian countries had. Well, like Burma was a British colony, and then Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam were French. So the Thais were sandwiched in between the French and the British, and somehow they managed to stall off the invasion through clever political means. But the thing is, they didn't have that much influence, in terms of using the English language. So it was at that time, back in the 50s and 60s, the idea of going to Sri Lanka was one option, because they'd been a British colony, or Burma. But in 1962, Burma became impossible. They didn't want foreigners, and this oppressive government took over. So you couldn't get permission to go to Burma. So the obvious one, 1966, was Thailand. Living in Malaysia, then going to Thailand. Then having the opportunity to meditate as a lay, I started meditation in Bangkok at Wat Mahathat, one of the main temples in Bangkok, one of the really old temples there. And that led on to ordination, to monastic life. And then with that, the support that one receives as a alms mendicant. Like we're a mendicant order, so this means that we give up our rights to hold money. We can't, one of our rules, Ajahn Chah was very strict about this, so we couldn't have private funds or handle or hold money. So we can't dig in the soil, we can't go and plant cabbages and support ourselves in any way. We're completely dependent on others for the basic necessities. So as like this morning, when you offered the food, the bindabata, the alms food, this tradition, when we contemplate this every day, of my monastic life, there's been somebody offering food to me. Whether it's in Thailand, in a poor village, or in Bangkok, or here at Amravati, wherever, then this is a sense of this person is offering food because it's a necessity. You know, we have to eat, and if you don't have money and you can't grow your own food, what do? And so the Buddha established this tradition on mendicancy. So we make ourselves completely dependent on the goodness, good-heartedness, kindness of others. And from that, over 45 years of depending on the kindness of others, you know, you realize a sense of gatanyu gataveti manifests. Because during this 45 years, there's never been any lack of the necessities, the requisites, the food, shelter. There's 4 requisites: food, shelter, something to wear, and medicine for illness. So here in England, you know, shelter, there's never been any problem about shelter, food, robes, and medicine, National Health Service. So living here in the UK is very easy for an alms mendicant. Also, even our experience as Buddhist monks living in a non-Buddhist country, like we have discussions, monks get together and talk about going alms round in Berkhamsted. You know, who's going to give food to a Buddhist monk in Berkhamsted? But they do. You know, people that don't know anything about Buddhism but there is that kind of generosity amongst people in this country. Monks have gone walked through the English countryside, Scotland, places like that, where there's been that response of generosity. And then that generosity we reflect upon, because we're not thinking that you should give me food, and we're not demanding it. We're not going around saying, you know, you have to give me a meal. I'm a starving beggar. You know, your sense of decorum is high. You have this vinaya where you have to conduct yourself in a way that is not annoying, irritating, or intimidating to lay communities. So in this way, then, this seems to generate a kind of respect, interest, curiosity. All these kind of feelings arise in people that may not have a clue of what you're about. But it does generate this sense of interest, and then wanting to. It does arouse this generous feeling of the lay community. So this monastery here was built through donations. In all this whole, it's all on almsgiving, not through business, or through intimidating people, or through corruption, or through stealing, or this building here is the result of generosity. And so when you look at this building, which I, really like, and you feel gatanyu, gataveti arising. Because I didn't have to go around kind of, nagging people or pursuing them and intimidating them into coughing up money for my temple. It just seemed to come from that place in individuals, that willingness to make donations for such a building to manifest. So then the Buddhist samana, the Buddhist monastic, has this sense of gatanyu. We develop it. It's part of our life because we did intentionally put ourselves into this position of alms mendicancy. So in terms of rites, there's a time where everybody's demanding their rights, and yet alms mendicants were giving up our rights. And when I first realized this, it was in Thailand, I thought, I liked the idea. I had this kind of romantic idea of being a Buddhist monk, meditating by a stream, writing haiku poetry, and being at peace with the world. And so, I quite moved into the monastic form because on one level I had these kind of romantic illusions about it, kind of beautiful lifestyle. But then it dawned on me after I was in what I'd really done, put myself into this position of total dependency. Americans, we're not brought up to be dependent. My parents were. They don't ever depend on anyone else. Make sure you have money in the bank, you have your life insurance, you've got everything ready, because if you don't take care of yourself, nobody else will. And so don't be in debt or owe anything to anybody. Make sure that you're independent, secure. And then I joined the monastic order in Thailand. What happens? Even food. Have to go out with an alms bowl and hope somebody puts something into it. But then what's the point of this? Why did the Buddha establish a tradition that's lasted so long on such a kind of seemingly uncertain tradition as a samana tradition, alms mendicancy? And it is interesting because it makes you contemplate that there is this wisdom behind the Buddha's teaching, a kind of vision, an understanding of human nature that I didn't have when I started this. I was much more cynical, Basically, we're selfish. Our main, characteristic is we're selfish. Get everything for yourself. Make sure that you have yours. Me first, my rights, what I think. This is quintessential American inspiration. Be somebody. Don't be a beggar on the street, an alms mendicant going around with an alms bowl, but, win the prize, win the lottery, be a multimillionaire, ride around in a Cadillac. And instead you're walking barefoot with an alms bowl. So it's interesting, I'm talking like this to reflect on kind of the total difference between worldly values and this samana life, because it isn't understood very well in the West, because it's not really a part of our cultural attitudes or ideals or expectations. So then we train ourselves living within the structures of an ancient discipline. So we're not New Age trendy types. We come from an ancient tradition that was developed, so long ago that, we in such a different place, different time, different place. But the discipline is itself a tradition that carries this teaching through. It's not through. That's why the teaching has managed to survive without being corrupted or distorted through these years, because the way it was set up, that it's able to go through the various periods, rise and falls of civilization, kingdoms, political systems. And just in my lifetime, remember, say, 30, 40 years ago, we thought Buddhism was, on the way out. It seemed to be disappearing. Like in Asia, for example, China was communist, Mongolia was communist. The communists seemed to, they had this view that all religion is wrong, is corrupt, is the opiate of the people. There's an attempt to destroy Buddhism. In Mongolia, in 1936, the Stalinist government there actually murdered the whole Sangha of Mongolian Buddhists. They found these mass graves. I was born in 1934. 2 years of my life, and then, they came and they annihilated, tried to destroy Buddhism in Mongolia. It's reviving again. In China also. And then, in my own experience, seeing the interest in Buddhist teaching in countries like this, Western world, that say 50 years ago, there was very little interest, understanding, or curiosity about it, about Buddhism. And now, it has a good public image, there's a lot of interest, there's a plethora of information, books, websites. They have websites where you can have Dharma discussions all over the planet. Give forth your opinion, your view of what Buddhism really is. And there's all kinds of good things and not very good things. But it's now no longer just one of those maybe interesting or curious Asian religions. It's now in the consciousness as something worthy of respect, and people are. Many people who would never have thought of it or seen the value of it are beginning to respect it or maybe take an interest, or there's a level of curiosity about what Buddhism really is about. So then this alms mendicant life is the result of it through our reflections. We reflect on it every day, like the reflection on the four requisites. Every day we have the shelter we live in, the robes we wear, the medicine that is allowed us for ailments, diseases, and then the food. We reflect that this is the sense of gatanyu, got to wait the results through this reflection, because we're not demanding it. We don't say, you should give us the requisites. We can't do that. We can't kind of intimidate you into doing it. But it does, because it does come from this relationship of respect that the lay people fear, that the four requisites are supplied. And so then, through this reflection, then this gatanyu, this gratitude, is the result of that. So reflect on the gratitude is not just about how you should feel, or it's not. There's that level of it. It's a good idea. You can be grateful. It's recommended. One can see it as just another, good thing to be doing if you can feel it. But how do you generate gratitude? You can't just convince yourself through willful determination to be grateful as a person, but through reflecting on the goodness, the good things that have happened to you in your life. The gratitude that one feels towards one's parents, the fact that they did love me, they tried. Father, I was born in the worst part of the Depression in the 1930s. So parents lost everything they had 2 children right in the midst of a depression. Of course, I was a baby. I didn't realize what, the suffering they must have felt. And, the sense of insecurity that my parents felt through that experience of the depression. And the disappointments. My father, his whole professional life was upset. He had to do something he didn't like in order to provide a living for my sister and I. Well, I didn't find that out until I was adult myself, didn't really reflect on it. The sacrifices my parents made just to provide me with food, shelter, clothing, medicine, and that then I feel this gratitude for that kind of concern, love, care, the sense of sacrifice that they made to see that I had the necessities of life to survive. Then in the monastic form, putting oneself into this alms mendicant role, this position in the society relationship is based on that gratitude of the generosity, goodness of the lay community that provides these requisites. That also leads to contentment. And contentment, just contemplate contentment. A really contented person, individual. Is that possible? Is that, what do you have to do to be content? It's like an idea, an ideal. But the society, we live in a society that is totally averse to contentment. Modern free market capitalism. The last thing they want you to do is be content. The economy will be a wreck. And so, everything is about making you discontented, envying, wanting, you see something, somebody has a better car than you have, then you want to get a better one than they have. And the advertising, the whole zeitgeist of the age is discontentment, making you envious, jealous, wanting things that you may not really need, but always seeing that the latest, the new, is better than the old. So it's, and this, we can't just make ourselves content as a willful act. That comes through reflection, through gratitude. It's not a willful act. It's not an egotistical determination to pretend I'm content. But contentment comes through recognizing the suffering of discontentment. So in my experience of monastic life, I lived in northeast Thailand for 10 years, so that was the poorer, more disadvantaged part of Thailand. And then, my own experience of life was being born into city life in America, in a kind of middle class value system of where, luxury is just taken for granted, and keeping up with the Joneses, envying and trying to compete with others was part of the cultural conditioning that formed my personality. Then in the monastic life, which was living in, on a basic level, where electricity or convenience or luxury was not part of the life at all. The shelter for the night isn't like you have to, because I'm a Western monk, an American, you should build me an American style kuti with a fridge and air conditioning. So, the expectation is a shelter for the night, root of a tree gives you shelter for the night. So it's basic, kind of at the lowest possible level of primitive shelters is the root of a tree. And so I've never really had to do that, just live at the root of a tree. There's always been, even the poorest places I've lived in, there's been some kind of shelter better than the root of a tree. So then what does that do? Gratitude arises for that. And then your contentment, you're not thinking and trying to always get better and improve, but you're content with very simple things. Life is very simple, peaceful, contented. And then we experience the joy and the bliss that comes through this way of reflecting and learning, rather than striving willfully, trying to control, manipulate conditions out of fear and out of ignorance. So I offer this as a reflection for you. It's 3:00 now. And what have we next? Yes.
Dr. Sumedo, over the past 25 years or more, you have very kindly and compassionately tried to explain to us the meaning of the word impermanence. However, when we thought of Longpo Sumedo's stay at Amaravati, we always thought it would be a permanent feature in Great Galveston. Now we know the truth. So we are going to miss your kind smiles. We are going to miss your gentle laughter. And we will always miss your great presence at Amaravati. We are deeply, deeply indebted to you and grateful to you for all what you have extended to us with kindness and compassion over the 20 more years. And today, in gratitude, we like to make this offering in memory of all our parents departed and to bless all our parents living today. And thank you once again, and wishing you all the very best of health, peace and contentment in your retirement.
Thank you. So this Mr. Chandi Pereira and his wife, he's the initiator of this. He came to me 25 years ago, I think, and suggested this. And so it was a very good suggestion, and something that I felt I really wanted to support and kind of hope it continues when I'm gone, because it is an important reflection for us all. And I will be leaving England on the next month, going back after the Katina ceremony here, going back to Thailand. And I've invited the Venerable Ajahn Amro to come and take on the duties of the abbot of this monastery, and he's kindly and willingly accepted that position. So, just to encourage you to support him and learn from him. He has developed. I've seen him from when he first ordained to the present, so I have great confidence and respect for him, and gratitude also that he has willingly taken on this position, because this is a very big community, and it's a big place, so you've got to deal with so many things. It's not a simple little vihara. It's got so many things, duties, responsibilities, meetings, and all the rest that is can be quite demanding. So the Sangha here in England, the monastic Sangha, has all agreed to invite Ajahn Amaro here. So he's here at the Sangha's invitation, and I'm sure he will not disappoint you. In fact, he'll probably be much better than I am. So. And it is time for me to, while I'm still compos mentis, fairly healthy, to retire. And then going, Thailand, I've always kind of regretted, part of me, always wanted to live and stay in Asia. I have this incredible love for Asia that I don't understand myself, developed as a child, and how I got it, I don't know, but it's always been with me. So I never thought that I would have an opportunity to go back and live in Thailand. I'd go back, for short visits over these past years in England, but never thought I would have the occasion to go back and live there. So I'm quite looking forward to it. But there's always a sense of, because I've been so involved with this place and the life here in England, that there is a mixture of sadness and gladness. I'm not just happy to go. There's a certain joy and prospect of not having duties, responsibilities. I keep telling people I want to be just like an old frog on a lotus leaf. Everybody overlooks. But I don't know if that's possible in Thailand. I'd be a huge frog on a little lotus leaf. I'm trying to refrain from committing myself to any kind of commitments to take on duties again. So this is a time for an old man for solitude and for reflection, rather than for just going on till I drop dead. Here in Amaravati for the past few years, the monastic Sangha has been very considerate, so the monks here have been very, helpful, supportive of me so they're not always pressuring me or pushing me, give me a lot of space. So there's nothing, it's not leaving out of any kind of negativity or disappointment here. But just you realize, when your karmic, connection has reached its end, and the need for me to be here is no longer here. It has its own momentum, and that's the good thing about life here, is that it isn't based on just me as some kind of figure, and then when I'm gone it all falls apart. It has its own momentum now. It isn't dependent on me in any way. So that's something to really respect. It gives it a sense it has its own power. It's not just the total kind of sense of once he's gone, that's the end of it. It's like the Buddha, when Ananda said, what did we do when the Buddha was dying? What are we going to do without our teacher? And when you're gone, who will take your place? He said, I leave you the Dhamma Vinaya. So that's quite significant. He already established the teaching and the tradition, a conventional structure. And that's what has the momentum here. It's established as a tradition. And the teaching, the pure teaching of the Buddha is what is taught, what is used here at Amaravati. So it's based on that power of tradition and momentum that was initiated by the Lord Buddha himself. So anyway, I'll give a blessing for you. Yathavari vaha pura varipurenti sakarang evameva ito tinang betanang ubakapati echitang batitang dumhang kipameva samichatu sape burento sangapa yanto banaraso yatha manicho diraso yatha Sapitio vivachantu, saparoko vinasatu mate pavat, vantarayo sukhiti kayuko bhava, abhivatana silisa nityang utapachayino, chattaro dhamma vatanti, ayukvano sukhang phalang, bhavantu sabba mangalang, Rakantu sabba devata sabba buddha nupavena satasoti bhavantu te bhavantu sabba mangalang rakantu sabba devata sabba dhamma nupavena satasoti bhavantu te bhavantu sabba mangalang rakantu sabba devata Sabbha sankhanupavena sathasoti bhavantu te.